What's going on, guys? Sean Applegate here, 10th Planet Atlanta, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt. I'm back with another Coach's Corner video for you guys. So basically, in these videos, I'm just talking about things that have to do with coaches and students and, the interplay between it. There's not a lot of content out there, so wanted to help you guys out however I can. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the 3 things that most coaches and students miss. These are things that not everyone misses. Some people do this really well. Some people do a couple of them really well. Some people do all of them really well. But some people miss them, and it's the most common thing that I think I see. So first on the list, we're going to talk about ego management. So one of the things in jiu-jitsu that you hear a lot is that you shouldn't have an ego, which is literally impossible. Ego is pretty much just how we see ourselves. And you're probably going to stick with jiu-jitsu because of your ego, right? Like, if you had no ego, then you probably really wouldn't be that interested in jiu-jitsu, right? Like, when you come in and it's really hard and you don't see a lot of progress, you'll probably go and do something else. But in jiu-jitsu, we have this strive to be better and get better, and then once we do, we feel this sense of accomplishment, and then we think of ourselves in a higher plane. We're like, yeah, I think I could defend myself. I have that confidence. It's really hard to have all that self-confidence and not have any ego, not see yourself in a heightened state compared to where you were before. So ego is something that we all deal with. It's something that's necessary for life. If we just pretend like it's not there, then it's a little disingenuous, to be honest with you. So with that being said, ego management as a coach and as a student, really, but as a coach is super important. But the students get it all the time. The coaches are always telling them, listen, you need to check your ego. It's causing all these problems for you, yada, yada, whatever. However, as a coach, you also have a responsibility to your student to help them manage their ego. And it's not just harping on them the whole time. It's actually how you communicate with them. You see, if you communicate in an ineffective way, you'll actually cause damage to the ego. If you cause damage to the ego, you can stunt the student's growth completely and or make them quit completely, right? So a great example of this is constantly telling your students things about them, like giving them compliments that are completely undeserved. People aren't stupid. If you just tell them all the time that they're the greatest ever, then they don't take you seriously anymore, and they're not going to really listen to what you have to say. Maybe they need a pat on the back every once in a while, and that's great. But if you're constantly telling them that they're the greatest ever, they obviously know that they're not the greatest ever. They know that this random blue belt in your gym knows he's not Gordon Ryan. He can't just walk out here and fight Andre Galvao. You know what I'm saying? So, I know that it's mostly figurative, but the problem is when that shifts into things that are slightly believable to them, it puts pressure on them. So like all of a sudden, like maybe one of your students is excelling really quickly. He's winning a lot of amateur level, like local tournaments, right? So he goes to these tournaments, he's winning, feels really good about himself, goes back to his coach. Hey, what's up, coach? What do I need to work on? What do I need to do? Whatever. And then you're like, man, listen, you could be one of the best ever. Right now you're doing so good for how long you've been in. Like, really, you could really be one of the best ever. When you say things like that to them, sometimes it brushes right off their shoulders. Some students have such a good grip on their ego that really does go over the way you want it to. However, there are a lot of students out there with fragile self-confidence and egos, and when you tell them things like that, all it really does to them is screw their head up. All it really does is make them think that they've attained some level of respect, right? That's going to be hard for them to hold on to. And so when they go to compete again, they may be very nervous, or it may affect like their ability to go out and get better every time they compete, because maybe now they stop competing to get better at the low level, and maybe now they're competing to hold on to this respect that they think they've earned. You know what I mean? And a lot of students, when you start, you can't fathom how you could ever possibly get as good as even just the next rank up in your gym. When you start telling people stuff like that, and you're like, hey, you could be one of the best ever, man, that really can, not will, but can put that pressure on them. And there's a lot more than that. It's more than just the example I gave. But ego management as a coach, telling them the good and the bad and being real with them. The best thing you can do is just be real with your students. You know what I'm saying? If they go out and they compete and they lose and they screwed up, tell them that they screwed up. You don't have to be a jerk. You don't have to be like, hey man, listen, you screwed up, and then walk away from them. You just need to be real with them, and your students will appreciate that, because when it's time to give them those compliments, when it's time to boost them up and make them believe in themselves, they'll take what you say seriously, and they won't take it with a grain of salt. It's like your mom calling you handsome. You're kind of like, okay, mom, well, you're kind of supposed to tell me I'm handsome. You know what I mean? I don't really take that too serious. But when your crush calls you handsome, you're like, oh my God, it changes everything. It makes you happy. That's the difference between your coaches telling you the truth and being real with you, and then always being a cheerleader. Cheerleader isn't isn't the coach. There's no cheerleader that's the coach. You know what I'm saying? The coach is the coach. Let the cheerleaders be the cheerleaders. There's 50 people that'll come up to them after they lose a match and tell them that they did a great job, and they'll let that brush right off their shoulders. What you say matters. What you say means something to them on a deep, deep level. Don't use that as an opportunity to just give them this one-off meaningless compliment because you want them to feel better. It's going to do the exact opposite, if anything, you know? So, number 2 is cohesive jiu-jitsu. This one's a little different. Last thing we were talking about was a mentality thing, personality thing. This one, we're talking about technique. Cohesive jiu-jitsu. Oftentimes what I see, and it stunts the students' growth, is this compartmentalization of jiu-jitsu, where you have guys who do jiu-jitsu, and then they're like, all right, well, we have this leg lock class over here, or we have this like guard passing class over here, or we have this thing that separates a part of the game from the rest of it. Sure, we do have to isolate parts of the game to train them. We do have to do that. However, if you isolate an entire piece of jiu-jitsu and you make it this like side set thing, then it's going to do that in your students' minds. So like a lot of times I find like places that have like a leg lock class, and there's nothing wrong with it. Do what you want to do. Oftentimes though, those students have a hard time bringing their leg locks and the rest of their game together as a cohesive jiu-jitsu. A lot of times for them, leg locks are something else. So it's like, okay, I need to switch to leg locks, or I need to try to do leg locks, when all of a sudden that needs to happen in real time in a match or whatever, and it can't happen. They have, to make a switch in their mind, which is not what you want with your students. You want it to be a cohesive jiu-jitsu. You want your guard passing to be to have leg locks taken into consideration. You want your leg locks to have guard passes taken into consideration, and all these other things. So having a cohesive jiu-jitsu and not over compartmentalizing it can cause your students' growth to multiply, right? Like you got to see exponential growth in your students in a short amount of time if you teach them a cohesive jiu-jitsu, right? They're never confused. If they think of ashi the same way they think of side control, just another position in jiu-jitsu that we all play, then their jiu-jitsu is going to grow so fast. But if they think of ashi as this kind of side thing, well, if leg locks get involved, or if you do this tournament where there's leg locks or yada, 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 then it compartmentalizes it too much, and they don't put it in with the rest of it, and they don't think about it the same way, and that can cause a huge problem in a student's growth, especially early on. All right, guys, and number 3, the positional trichotomy of you guys, the coaches, okay? This is something that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, and it's something that's so important, okay? There's a trichotomy when you become a coach, and that trichotomy is the instructor, the mentor, and the coach, okay? All 3 of those things are different by nature, okay? The instructor is the guy in the room that understands all of the stuff about the moves. He understands how they work together. He understands the techniques and what goes on the mat at a super high level, and can impart that information onto the students in a efficient and a quick, like a meaningful way, right? So like a good instructor is somebody who can sit in front of the class and wow everyone with the technicality that they're sort of presenting with their lesson, okay? So when I think of good instructors, I think of people like John Danner is a great instructor. I think of Ryan Hall. I think of people like that. Those are great instructors, okay? Coaches are people that deal with the mental aspect and the more of the competitive aspect of jiu-jitsu. Coaches are the kind of guys that are really just working with the athlete individually. So a coach is the kind of person that can sense that their student is down, or their student is up, or their student is like feeling some type of way, and talk to them and build that confidence, or get their head back on straight, or whatever the situation may be. You're dealing with more of the mental aspect of the actual grappling as a coach. A coach also helps a student develop themselves, so the instructor teaches the technique, but the coach is the one that helps them develop it, right? The instructor doesn't help them develop it, the coach does, right? So you're developing the athlete, you're helping the athlete mentally and physically deal with their own personal struggles. That's what a coach is for, okay? And then you have a mentor. And a mentor is going to help these athletes keep their life outside of jiu-jitsu together, right? So they come in, they have all these problems in their outside life. Jiu-jitsu is crazy cohesive, how it works with like people who would never have any social interaction with one another become bonded together through jiu-jitsu. And it's a magical thing, and it's beautiful. But what ends up happening is a lot of times these coaches, or even just senior ranked students in the gym, become mentors to the lower ranks. And sometimes I've seen young guys, 21, 22, 23-year-old guys, mentor 35, 40-year-old men just because the young guy has a higher rank or he's better at jiu-jitsu than the older guy. And it's not even a life experience thing. And you don't ask for that a lot of times. You just get shoved into it. I think a lot of jiu-jitsu coaches talk about how we're all kind of like therapists, you know? We're not really therapists. The thing is we're mentors, all right? And you may not ask to be put in that mentor role for somebody, but a lot of times we find people in our lives and we make them our mentors without ever consulting them or even knowing that we're doing that to them. And that is a personality trait, I think, that some people really strive to acquire. And then sometimes it's a personality trait that people already have. They can mentor people and they're just great people and they're good at helping people with sort of life problems, you know? And I think the best leaders in jiu-jitsu, the best leaders do 2 out of the 3 extremely well, and they do a third one like okay. Some people are extremely good at one and really poor at the other 2, right? But I've never met anyone in jiu-jitsu that was extremely good at all 3, right? You know how much energy it would take to be extremely good at all 3? I'm going to be the best instructor. I'm going to understand the technique at a level no one understands it. I'm going to be the best coach. My students are always going to be on point and focused and never lose track of that. And I'm going to help them through all that. I'm going to be the best mentor. All my students are going to have their lives together and be financially stable and be able to build careers off of jiu-jitsu. Nobody has that. Like, no one has that. You know, I've been blessed in my life to have great mentors, great coaches, great instructors step up individually and help me to develop myself. And I try to be the best of all 3 from my guys. But personally, and I'm going to give you guys some deep personal evaluation here, I think I do the instruction part well. I think I do the coaching part well. I think I do the mentor part horribly. If you come to me, I don't know what it's like to be divorced. I've never been divorced. I don't know what it's like to go to jail. I don't know what it's like to be on the run. I don't know what it's like to do most of these things that all these people do that they have their issues with. I've never been bankrupt. I've never been homeless. I've never done any of that stuff. I've never been addicted to drugs. You know what I mean? And so sometimes when people come in and they're like, oh, I have all these problems, and man, I don't know what to do. I don't have kids, you know? Like, I don't have any of that stuff. So to be a mentor, I just feel like I don't have the life experience for it. Maybe one day. You know, but the instruction and the coaching is what I focused on. But you know, I was lucky enough to have Brandon McCatherine in my life when I was young, and Brandon McCatherine is a great mentor. He does that extremely well, and so I was able to consult with him on any personal life problems I had, and he could steer me in the right direction. He does that part of the job extremely well, you know, and I think that's what, you know, people are super drawn to him because of that, and that's a beautiful thing. You know, it's a beautiful thing if people are drawn to you for the thing that you're truly good at. You know what I mean? And for him, it's being a great mentor, you know? But anyways, guys, those are the 3 things that I think most people who are put in leadership positions in jiu-jitsu miss out on. And I think the reason for that is because anyone can become that person. Anyone can. All you have to do is be the best guy in the room. Be the highest rank in the room. Be the guy who doesn't have jiu-jitsu in his town and wants to open a school. Like, be any of those things, and all of a sudden you're now thrust into this position where people are going to put you on this pedestal and expect you to know every technique in fine detail, be able to teach them every technique in fine detail, make sure that they learn it and develop into their potential, essentially, and help them with any life problems that may come up along the way. That's the trichotomy of being in that leadership position. So those are the 3 things, guys. Ego management, okay, massive. Okay, cohesive jiu-jitsu in your gym. You want a whole jiu-jitsu, not a segmented jiu-jitsu. And the positional trichotomy of being a leader. All right. So once again, guys, this has been the Coaching Corner. I'm Sean Applegate, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu Atlanta. Thank you guys for everything. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a sub, like this, comment on it, let me know what you guys think, and turn on those notifications. If you turn on the notifications, just comment Noti Gang right in the comments there, and I'll post you guys up on the next video. Thank you guys for everything. See ya.